So, roll with me on this. It's 1999. You've had a tough day in your 90s school, learning 90s things and generally embracing that in a mere few months the Millennium Bug will wipe out life on this planet as we know it. You need some sort of stress relief. So as you approach your house, Pokemon lunchbox in hand, a small glimmer of hope ignites in the back of your mind. You throw your shoes off, lay down your school bag, and turn on the grey-coloured machine sat under your TV that's been bleached from constant sunlight exposure. You hear those deep bass tones reverberate as the PlayStation logo lights up the screen and fades into the cartoonish yet familiar theme of Crash Bandicoot 2's menu screen. Pure bliss. I've played the odd game or two in my time, but few video game franchises have been with me as long as Crash Bandicoot. I want to say that its lineup has been hit after hit, being something that has had my back through thick and thin, but I'd be lying through my teeth. Truth is, for me, Crash Bandicoot wasn't the same after it left the PlayStation 1. It felt different. Maybe that was due to the change in studio or the change in console, I simply don't know. But despite my many attempts to rekindle the fire, Crash Bandicoot just felt like shit to me, and continued to do so for long over a decade. So, of course, you can imagine my surprise when not only did they announce a remake of the first 3 games at E3 2016, but also that the games were actually good. Their shiny new coat of paint was complemented perfectly with just the right amount of quality of life improvements to round out the whole experience. In short, this was a remake done correctly, and it was the rocket fuel that propelled Crash Bandicoot back into the public's attention. Naturally, with such critical and commercial success, fans were quickly asking for a true sequel to the Insane trilogy, where their prayers were answered in October 2020 with the release of Crash Bandicoot 4, It's About Time. Let me be clear, I love Crash Bandicoot. I love how he helped to break in the third dimension, I love his simple yet addictive gameplay mechanics, and I love that there is finally a 4th game to add to the original trilogy. But Crash Bandicoot 4, It's About Time, is a little disappointing to me. That's not to say it's a bad game, oh no, far from it. I think the level design is fantastic, the new mask power-ups work incredibly well, and overall, Toys for Bob created a game that genuinely tested the more experienced Crash Bandicoot players of the late 90s. However, I feel the game as a whole could have been better, and a number of smaller issues made a bigger problem that's held Crash 4 back from true stardom. Therefore, the purpose of this video is to address what I feel are Crash 4's main flaws, and look at ways in which they could be changed or improved on to make the game better as a whole. So, my dear viewer, please join me as I discuss the problems with Crash Bandicoot 4 and how to fix them. I find Crash 4 is a bit of an oddity when trying to explain what its flaws are. On paper, it fits just about everything you could wish for in a classic Crash title, taking everything that was great about the Insane trilogy and making it bigger and bolder. More levels, more challenges, and a hell of a lot more boxes to break, all the while keeping its focus firmly centred on the orange marsupial himself. The thing is, on their own, none of Crash 4's issues feel big enough to really affect the game, but as they begin to stack up, they almost start to distort what really works about Crash Bandicoot as a whole. It's kinda like standing in front of a funhouse mirror. All the parts are there to correctly display your reflection, but with just a few changes to the glass, and you quickly start to look as appealing as Shrek's first dump of the day. So with that image in mind, I think it's only fair to talk about what the issues are that have led us to this stage. I feel Crash Bandicoot 4 suffers most from longer and harder level design combined with Platinum Relic runs not being optional, filler content such as the Nverted Mode, being forced to replay the same levels over and over, levels having far too many boxes and hidden gems being way too hard to find, too many pointless collectibles, perfect runs, perfect runs, and full completion rewards feeling seriously lacking. So let me be clear, I love the levels in Crash 4. They felt so much like the classics while providing some interesting new locations and platforming segments through the addition of the mass mechanics. I had a blast slowing time and sprinting across nitro crates, soaring through the skies as a death tornado, and willing platforms into existence while rapidly descending towards the ground in a body slam, just to name a few. Truly, this was the future of Crash Bandicoot I had always imagined, and the levels work great. Sure, there's one hell of a difficulty curve, feeling like you need to have some prior experience with the series, but the levels themselves are everything I could have asked for as a veteran Crash Bandicoot fan. However, the levels and their new longer, more difficult length don't always work so well with just about everything else in this game, and that's a serious problem in my opinion. Platinum Relics demand all the precision and speed that they did in the previous games, but are now a requirement for full completion and must be completed over more difficult scenarios. The amount of boxes now easily top the 3-digit mark in any level, and even go up to 400 in places. It's a bit of an inconvenience to say the least when you miss that last one and have to redo the whole level again to give it another attempt. Speaking of which, boxes and gems are hidden in some insanely elaborate locations, often demanding that you spin behind every piece of the environment, and with a camera that barely has any sort of movement means that the natural flow of the level is constantly being killed as you try to scour the off-screen sections in hopes that you hear the crunch of broken wood. Along with that, the insane amount of pointless collectibles and filler content designed solely to justify the 50 quid price mark is just dull. 228 gems, 38 relics, 38 perfect relics, 3 types of relic for the VHS tapes, coloured gems, and an extra 228 gems for the exact same levels but with an Instagram filter make the game feel more like a shopping list than anything else. Ah yes, the Instagram filter levels. Or as the game likes to describe them, the inverted levels. They are literally the same levels you encounter through the main game, but have a slight artistical change, usually not for the better, and offer nothing new to the gameplay experience. Speaking of inverted levels, the game loves to make you replay levels over and over with little to no change in their design, usually only opting to move some boxes around. Nverted Mode is counted as its own set of levels with its own set of gems, despite it being a glorified filter pack, and you even play the exact same sections from Crash's levels when using a different character entirely. This means that in the incredibly unlikely event that you can nail every level first go, snagging all the collectibles along the way, and never putting a foot wrong, you'll be playing the exact same level a minimum of 6 times. Once normally, once inverted, once in a side character section, once in a side character section inverted, and twice for the Platinum Relics. It's hard to argue that any stage warrants this much revisiting, especially when it's required for full completion. And when you're done with that, the game decides to turn the difficulty up from fun but fair to I've just paid for the deluxe BDSM package at Mistress Mangler's weekend retreat by adding in the perfect relics. These are basically the same as the gem requirements from Crash 1, asking you to complete the level with all boxes and without dying, but now they've been roided up with a harder level design. I won't dive too much into my hatred for these, but nothing hurts more than being forced into getting a perfect run on bears repeating, only to have the box gem glitch out. And your reward for all this? A 30-second clip of Uka Ruka laughing his ass off that some dickhead actually did all this shit just for this piss poor reward. Well, pin the dunce badge on me, I did it and I'll never do it again. An ending like this in the other games didn't feel so lackluster because it didn't expect so much of me at the same time. If this is what Toys for Bob wanted as a challenging game, then the payoff for full completion of said game should match. Whew. So there you have it. An extremely brief summary of what drags Crash 4 down from true stardom. As much as I wanted to address the issues that plague the game, I didn't want them to be the sole focus of this video. I believe solutions are far more important. However, if you want a more in-depth look at the issues of Crash Bandicoot 4 itself, then I recommend Kadikarus' video on the subject, link in the description. With that being said, let's dive into the meat and potatoes of the video by looking at some ways in which I feel Crash 4 could be greatly improved. Bear in mind, these are only my opinions on how I feel Crash 4 could be improved. You're entitled to disagree with me entirely, but I've tried to base my suggestions on what would help to keep Crash 4 more in line with the Insane trilogy, particularly Crash 2 and 3, as they seem to be the games that define people's perspective of what Crash Bandicoot is. To begin, Platinum Relics should be completely optional, just like they were in the Insane trilogy. They offered something for the hardcore fans to work towards, but didn't make the difficulty of fully completing the game totally out of reach for the more casual audience that Crash Bandicoot also appeals to. Platinum Relics could also offer a unique skin as an incentive that wouldn't count to totals or achievements, similar to how Yooka-Laylee and the Impossible Lair's extremely difficult but totally optional gold skin is unlocked. In previous games, having to obtain gold relics felt like a fair but forgiving challenge for most players regardless of skill levels, and would still offer a pretty challenging experience in Crash 4 given the harder level design. So if the developer's main aim was to create a game that was more difficult than the originals, then this change back to gold relics would still keep in line with that vision. Next, I'd probably just take out a good chunk of the filler content this game insists you play through. Nverted Mode should be completely optional as the filters themselves offer very little in the way of changing the gameplay, so I'd use them more as a toggle option from the main menu screen if the player fancied mixing things up a bit when replaying a level or hunting down the odd box gem. Think of it more how Ratchet & Clank use their filter modes. They're rewarded to the player for finding hidden gold bolts, but are never forced upon you, demanding you appreciate the hard work that's gone into them. Ratchet & Clank understands that filters aren't to everyone's taste, and therefore never feels intrusive. Along with this, I'd cut out Crash controlled sections from the side character levels, as the game is already 90% classic Crash gameplay, and these sections themselves are literally the same parts of the main game, so it never really adds anything by being forced to replay them for the 100th time. Sure, the side character levels would be shorter if they did this, but I'd prefer that instead of retreading over old ground, as at least these sections are brand new and built around a different character's controls, which helps to add variety. In an ideal world, I'd say it would be nice to see the side characters' levels extended to make up for cutting Crash out, but I can understand that time restraints may have been a factor in why we got so much rehashed content, so at the very least keep their levels shorter and give them more time to breathe. Sometimes less is more. I also feel that the game is bogged down and suffering from a serious case of collectathonitis, an unsightly condition where the patient suffers bloating from the large collection of junk they've been forced to drag around with them. At the moment, Crash 4 is nearly a terminal case, but Dr. Alex over here wants to perform a series of simple cuts to the outer area, whereby removing all unnecessary items. Firstly, I've already discussed that the Nverted Mode is nothing more than a glorified filter pack and would be best suited as a fun little add-on should the player wish to use it. With that gone, so are the 228 extra gems that are needed for completion. Along with that, I'd streamline the gems you get for completing the main levels from 6 down to 3. One for breaking every box, one for the hidden gem, and one for the limited number of deaths in a run. I feel that the Wumpa Fruit gems are pointless when you have a gem for collecting boxes, as they are the main way you'd get Wumpa Fruit anyway. Hell, you can't even spin them away now, and they auto-collect upon breaking a box, which is an awesome quality of life improvement, but makes their gem inclusion even less warranted. I'd also boost the limited death gem from 3 to 5 to help with difficulty balancing, as at the end of the day the game will still require good knowledge of the levels as well as good timing and platforming skills to beat, but the extra 2 lives will give you that little bit more breathing room should you need it. That would bring the new gem total to roughly 114, which is a much more manageable amount and more closely resembles the gem counts that have come before. Of course, this change affects how skins are unlocked. Oh yeah, each level requires a set amount of gems to unlock a cosmetic, which is a welcome bonus, but wouldn't work with the new 3 gem rule, as you'd have to basically earn all 3 in a level to unlock everything, which may not be to everyone's taste. Therefore, skins will be unlocked based on the overall amount you have, just like they are in Rayman Legends, so you'd unlock a skin when collecting any 5 gems, then 10, then 15, etc., with the final skin unlocking after collecting all the gems in the game. This gives both casual and completionist players a good incentive to try and collect them. Casual players can pick up the odd 1 or 2 and still feel rewarded, whereas completionists feel that their dedication is also being rewarded as they're snagging the more elusive final skins. Next, I'd cut down the platinum relics you get for completing the VHS levels. Easy! You get a skin for beating all the levels, and an extra skin and a medal for beating them with all boxes. Just trim the fat. You don't really need 3 types of medals for these. Lastly, you know what's coming next. Bin off those perfect relics. They turn this game from challenging to torturous and for no good reason at all. In my opinion, they aren't in the spirit of what Crash Bandicoot is about. Naughty Dog had the good sense to change the box gems' deathless mechanics in the first game for the same reasons that are present in Crash 4. They are tedious, frustrating, and if you're anything like me, leave the player feeling hollow even after earning one. Even without them, Crash 4 would retain its difficulty through solid level design, a gem for 5 or less deaths, and the gold run relics. This doesn't new to the game's difficulty, rather it gives you a fighting chance at being able to attempt any of the above, however you see fit without quickly becoming overwhelmed. Even so, if you're a person that enjoys that sort of thing, then you're still able to impose this handicap on yourself in the same way people have been enjoying Nuzlocke challenges in Pokemon for the last decade plus. For this next point, I need to talk to you about something a little different, shall we say. This is Shadow the Hedgehog. Released at the end of 2005 and developed by the consistently reliable Sega, yes that's sarcasm, the game follows a title character on a quest for answers to his mysterious past where you get to choose your path through this excessively edgy world. Shadow the Hedgehog boasts gun gameplay, vehicular combat, and all of the most mild of swear words your tender ears could ever want. However, what Shadow the Hedgehog really excels at is being pure crap. Yes, despite my 12-year-old self thinking it was a dog's bollocks, an older, more critical Alex sees things a little differently. You might be thinking, what does this absolute masterpiece have to do with Crash 4? Well, I'm glad you asked, my dear viewer, as despite this game's many flaws, there's something hidden in its walls that could fix a lot of the problems with Crash 4. This is a checkpoint. There are numerous of these scattered through Shadow the Hedgehog's levels. They do everything you'd expect a checkpoint to do, as in it returns you to it upon your demise, but these ones are special. These checkpoints are all connected to one another, so standing on one lets you fast travel between the others that you've already touched. I'm sure you can already see where I'm going with this. Crash 4 has a serious problem with its ridiculously high box counts, so when you combine that with the increased level lengths and difficulty, getting to the end of a stage only to have missed a few boxes is absolutely soul destroying. Using a Shadow the Hedgehog style checkpoint system lets Crash retain its linear gameplay, but also allows players to get back to any section of the stage and begin the hunt again. It feels like a natural way to fix a problem which was apparent from the beginning and amplified in Crash 4, but without changing the foundations of what made a Crash Bandicoot level. We can still have those iconic running away from something sequences, but by adding a checkpoint box to the end of the level, where the box gem and nitro detonator typically spawn, gives you as many chances as you need to try again. You'll still need skill to get those more difficult to reach boxes, but this change just streamlines the whole experience, as you'll no longer have to restart a level should something pass you by in an on-rails section such as in a polar sequence. Of course, that only cuts down the amount of replays you'll need to break every box. It doesn't solve the issue of where those boxes are and how you're going to find them. While I stand by my point that some boxes are far too well hidden, and I feel the game would flow better if they were taken out, I can appreciate the need for exploration. Therefore, to find the right balance, I reckon we could further use the checkpoint system more effectively. As well as being a fast travel and respawn point, checkpoint boxes will now also show the total boxes for that individual section of the level. Think of it like this: you break open the checkpoint box and the hologram from the end of the level pops up, but only shows the total boxes obtainable from the previous checkpoint to this one. Along with that, it'll also show any nitro boxes you set off early, such as if you survived an explosion with an Aku Aku mask. So if a level had 400 boxes total, and every other section was completed except for one, you'll already have a much clearer idea on where to start looking to find those pesky final few. To me, it seems like the best way to keep the longer but equally well designed levels that Toys for Bob put so much effort into, while still keeping the box totals small enough to keep track of the more hard to find suspects. Along with that, there is something else we could take from the Sonic franchise to aid us here. As much as I like the hidden gems and want them to remain in my version of the game, I can't help but feel I'm not the only one out there who quickly gave up on looking for them and used a guide to find the rest. That's because they too are in some quite nonsensical locations, and the game doesn't offer any method for tracking if you're close to one. You could literally walk right past one and you'd never know. They don't glow enough to be seen behind environmental objects, and don't make any sort of shiny noise to indicate their location to you. It's something that games like Rayman 2, Spyro the Dragon and the 3D Marios do, and it's probably helped you out more than you realise. Anyway, I'm going off on a tangent there. As much as I like the idea, it wouldn't work as well in Crash since those games were all full 3D, so it affected how you interacted with the world itself. In Crash 4, if you heard a noise or saw a glow, you'd near instantly be able to locate it, as the levels are basically just nicely painted corridors. Therefore, I feel a Sonic Adventure 2 style hint system would be much better suited to Crash 4. You know how Knuckles stages have TV monitors that offer clues on buried emerald pieces? We'll do that here. Anytime you want to pause the game, the hint for that level will be displayed, revealing something that will stand out about the level and guide you in its direction. Take this gem in the inverted version of Rush Hour. The game doesn't tell you gems can be hidden inside falling platforms, and you're too busy trying not to fall to your death to notice it in the 0.3 of a second that it remains on screen, and that's if you even bother to hang around that long, so you'll likely not come across it yourself. A simple hint of something like, in the beginning 4 platforms fell, would let you know that A, it's early on in the level, B, is something to do with falling platforms, which is still quite common, so C, you should look out for 4 of them altogether. It still makes the player think about the level, and how interacting with the environment will cause the gem to appear, but it isn't as vague as having you trial and error your way off every edge of every corner in hopes that the gem will be sat on some impossible to see platform. Finally, I've talked a lot about the length and difficulty of the levels and how when combined with all the other elements of this game, make it much more frustrating than it needs to be. Truth be told, I wouldn't change the main levels at all. They're absolutely fantastic, and could be some of my favourites in the series. Now with all the changes I'd make to the other areas of the game, increased length and difficulty just kinda stops becoming a problem by itself. No longer do you have to worry about the excessive box counts, and how missing one will force an entire 15-minute replay, only to fail again. No longer will you have to play the same level over and over because you added a filter and some gems. Now you can take your time to explore, bask in the beauty of the worlds themselves, and rest easy knowing the mountain you're trying to climb just got a little less steep. So there you have it, my thoughts on what would help to improve Crash Bandicoot 4. It's funny because all the core areas that make Crash great are already present here, they're just bogged down with all this extra crap. Maybe Toys for Bob wanted to ensure players got value for money given that the game retailed at full price, but I feel the game would have been better if they trimmed down a lot of the fat and just charged somewhere around the £30 mark instead. Since they are developers and not publishers, maybe the price point was non-negotiable with Activision. You know, since it's Activision at the end of the day. Of course, this is all just speculation, and the release of Crash Bandicoot 4, It's About Time, has come and gone. So as I sit here in the early part of 2022, the 90s being a distant memory in the back of my mind, I wonder what the future holds for our beloved Bandicoot. All I can say is, I hope he's part of our gaming heritage for many years to come. And with that said and done, I want to thank you, my dear viewer, for watching, if indeed you still are. Thank you, and I'll see you in the next one.